Hey everybody, it's Kimrix here bringing you another build video for Gigantic. Today I'm going to show you how I play one of my favorite characters in this game, the true tank, the backbone of everything armor, Margrave. Now there's a lot of builds you can pull with him, but this is one of my favorites. I call it Fist of Fury. I feel like it covers all the bases, from protection to escape to pure output damage. It's fantastic. So let's jump right in. Now if you've had a chance to take a look at Margrave, you've probably noticed that in every path he has and every single ability, there is something that actually comes with armor attached to it. His counter gives him 90, Hellburst can give him 25, he can take a +5 character passive, increase his charge to go up to 50, and he can even add a +50 armor bonus to his leap that lasts for 5 seconds. Basically, Margrave is armor, it is his greatest strength. But if you take those paths, you're going to find yourself lacking in the damage department, so you have to find a balance. The decision I finally came to was going for the 90+ armor on the front side of Margrave once every 4 seconds. Now, this only lasts about 1 second when you use it, but just the fact that you can cycle it perpetually, if you can find the rhythm in combat, you can negate tons of damage at next to no cooldown. And because this attack is also bound to both weakness and an interrupt, you'll find that you can usually stop incoming damage from someone next to you, weaken them for anything coming up to prevent all that damage between your attacks like this, and then prevent a ton of incoming damage from range. Both resounding counter and debilitating blows are useful as follow-up, but I find that I'm always picking debilitating blows. It just helps at saving stam in some situations, since you're not going to have to re-counter every time as long as you keep the weakness on the person. With Hellburst, I only ever go burst of damage if everyone on the enemy team basically went melee. Since you will most likely never see that, Eternal Flame is still just the best pick here. The utility it brings is just too much to pass up, and both of its tier 2 abilities are pretty good. Most people at this point will pick Impenetrable Flame. I mean, you're getting ranged reflection to negate all range damage, you're getting the +25 front armor to then decrease the melee damage you're taking, and it just sits there and hurts people that are next to you. That's one of the better options you can take most of the time. I, however, like to build focus a lot, so I try any time that I can to get things that can help that with this character. Even if I have to be sneaky with it, I'll do it, and there really isn't a better feeling than reflecting an Amani ult back into her face and just ending her life with her own bullet. And the reason I say I'll take focus gain wherever I can is because of this next bit. Now if you'll notice, concentration gives you 20% faster focus gain as a second point spent. The problem is that the other branch of Ground and Pound actually comes with one ability that I find I can't live without. It gives me great frontline sustain, and I can re-enter battle without having to run all the way back to a creature. And that comes from the out-of-combat healing of Lifeline. And on top of that, if I'm playing with a Sven or a Vidasi or even a Vodin who plans on throwing pools down at my feet, I feel like they might be a little grateful for the additional 20% healing on what is now an even bigger health bar thanks to Hero's Vitality. This really helps out his frontline sustain and is greatly useful in a very aggressive team build. Now for his next two abilities, Charge Forth and Staggering Leap, I want to go over real quick what they actually are to him and what they can mean to you when you're picking your own abilities for every game that you'll play. I feel like the paths set up for both of these abilities can either be utility or mobility. You can either charge really far, or you get a short distance but an interrupting punch that actually puts out a little bit of damage. And then you can either stun a bunch of people out, help your team get a bunch of their focuses landed, or you can actually leap much further, and even a lot more often if that's something you feel is very worthwhile. The build I go tends to put the emphasis of mobility on the leap rather than the charge. The charge, I prefer the damage, just because of how beneficial the interrupt can also be in a pretty good fight. So we'll start off with Rush In Attack, and from here we'll head straight up to Flaming Fist. It gives us a wonderful amount of burst and even a little bit of a dot for the people who, like to run away. And then with the Leap, I'll aim for Smackdown and follow it up with Leap Before You Look. At the core of these picks is the mobility you'll gain. But on top of it, you're also gaining the more damaging leap as well, which means overall, between your two attacks, you're going to have the most damage output possible. That's just fantastic. Now, when it comes to a specialization, it's actually a bit hard of a choice, and that's why I consider him to be one of the best characters in this game in terms of design. All these things tend to change him in very positive ways, and I'm saying this when comparing them to things like +1 second to stealth, +1 second to poison. That's just not enough when compared to this. But like I said, I like to build focus quickly, and especially in Clash, that is a super useful thing to do. So I always seem to go for Impact Crater. It's just the most beneficial thing for my playstyle. It's just so great. Now with this build, again, the core damage reduction you're getting is from your counter blow. Now this demands that you really pay attention to what's going on around you. You need to have it ready to defend against any kind of incoming onslaught, some kind of alpha strike damage you just need to get rid of. You have to use it at just the right moment. You'll need to learn its timing, that way you can just pull it out of the hat whenever you need it. This build lives or dies by the quality of counter the player can pull off, and that plays very heavily into the idea that knowledge is power, so learn other people's abilities, learn what they can do, learn the maps, where you can stand to prevent people from hitting you from behind. Do everything you can to make sure you do not die. If you can achieve that with one attack, imagine what you can do incorporating the rest of his kit into play. Beyond that, engaging becomes important. Most Margraves I see tend to use the leap to get in, and I find that that's just an absolute waste. And with this build's Fire Punch, there is really nothing better to engage with. From an ambush position, it is devastating for most squishies in the game. It also allows you to put your leap on reserve, specifically for either executing or escaping. And the reason I prefer this over the charge is because the leap comes with something that the charge could not easily do. Go up a cliff. A lot of Gigantic's maps are based on verticality, and you can use that to your advantage. Some characters can chase you, but the filter of leaping up a cliff is just too good to pass up. So that just leaves build order, and as per always, you're going to want to feel out the game, you're going to want to feel out who you're playing with, who you're playing against. That'll really play into what you pick and win. But I find that my common path starts right away with Counter Fist. With 1 point you gain an interrupt, you gain a weakness, and you gain 90 armor. For the uninitiated, 1 armor is 1% damage reduction, so 90% damage reduction in 1 point. That's just too good. And then to follow up, I have to maximize my mobility, so I go for Smackdown. The distance and damage is worth it, especially in a slot as early as level 2. Now at this point, my Hellburst already protects me from range, and I'm already pretty tanky thanks to my counter. So I take the next couple levels, which are fairly easy to get, to finish out all my damage. Normally this means lowering the cooldown on my leap, and then going right in for rush-in attack and hitting Flaming Fist by level 5. Of course, simultaneously picking up Impact Crater. Of course, by around 6 and 7, most people in the game have gotten abilities that are going to feel a little angry, and you're going to need to sustain your own existence on the front line. So I tend to maximize my passives, going from Hero's Vitality straight to Lifeline. Now from here it's pretty simple. Even though I do like the idea of extending weakness on enemies, it's not as important for me as getting through Eternal Flame and going to Give 'em Hell. I know it's a bit late in the game to grab that Reflect, but it's also at a fairly good time in the game because most of the range characters have picked up all their great benefits for their ranged attacks. I feel like the surprise of hitting someone in the face with their own ability is more beneficial at level 9 than it would be, let's say, at level 3 or 4. And then of course the final point goes into debilitating blows. I do like it, but no matter how I look at this, it's the least necessary ability out of everything you pick. That's why I save it for the 10 spot. And that's about all I have for you on my main build for Margrave. Now there are others that I can show you. There's a pub specific build where you're, not as reliant on your team for helping out. There's even a toss gimmick build you can go, but sadly at this point in the beta, the toss doesn't actually work on most players. It'll only really work on NPCs, so I usually only go it in Sanctum Falls because you can actually throw one of the monsters out of the ring and kill it one shot. Well, let me know what you think. I'll of course have the build in the links below. You can show me what you prefer and even go into your reasoning for it in the comments. Or just let me know what you want the next character build video to be about. Maybe you like a character and a certain ability they have, but you can't seem to figure out how to get it to work. Let me know and I'll see what I can do. And if you enjoyed this and want more content like it, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. This is Kimmerix, and I'll see you in the arena.